Ah, what a lovely day. I really hope that some hyper casual who loves pet battles and spends all his money on the WoW shop doesn't randomly pop up. Wait a second. What's that smell? I smell an unchanged diaper.
Wait a second. Are you talking about me?
Well, I don't know. Are you wearing an unchanged diaper by chance?
Well, actually, it's a reusable diaper, so I don't need to change it.
Okay, that is not what reusable diapers do, but alright. So what are you doing over here exactly anyways?
I'm trying to learn my Resto Druid raid rotation, but I just can't figure it out, man. Hey, you look like a Resto Druid who raids. Can you help me out?
I mean, I guess. That depends though. What's your item level?
Where do I find that?
Oh boy. Alright, this is gonna take a while, man. You better get your notepad out.
Wait a second. Is that a in-game shop item? How much is it?
Oh god, you might be a lost cause, dude.
Wait, don't give up on me, man. Please, I'll give you 100k gold per hour. Please, man, please.
Oh, actually, I think my schedule just opened up. I think I can help you out. Yo, what is up, guys? This is Fuji. Today I'm going to be doing a Resto Druid raid healing guide. So, a few things before we start. I know in the skit in the beginning I said you're trash, but there's one thing that I want to clarify in that is that I am also trash.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass on.
The cool thing about healing in WoW, and the reason that I basically exclusively do it, is that I don't think there's actually like a cap or like a hard point of where you just can't get good anymore. I guess that's probably true for DPS and tanks also, but I don't know. Just as a healer, it feels like you can pump HPS and then you could get better at mechanics, and then you can do both of those but also do a lot of damage, and then you can really master your talent builds and kind of like become this niche fill for whatever encounter you're doing, and so that's just kind of why I really like healing. But yeah, so this is just some stuff I've learned over the years. I'm practically a druid one trick. I do dabble in some of the other healers, but this is the class I know most about. The thing I want to kind of point out is that even though I'm not a master and I can't just recite every single talent we have, I don't actually think that's necessary to be decent or even like good at your class. You just need to have an understanding of what's relevant, and kind of learn the rest as they become relevant. And I have some examples of that we'll go over later. But the real reason I wanted to make this is because Resto Druid is basically just an M plus healer, so if you look up any videos that will assist you in becoming better at Resto Druid, you're basically just going to find beginner guides, which there's so many of those these days. It is oversaturated out the ass. There's like 10 Resto Druid beginner guides per like patch, pretty much. And I think at this point they're kind of a little oversaturated. And if they're not beginner guides, there's just a billion M plus guides. And don't get me wrong, that's cool. I'm not much of an M pluser myself, you know. I do the lowest possible key I can for the highest possible reward in the vault, and then I don't do that anymore. I do like 8 keys a week, and then I move on, and I just really enjoy raiding. So anyway, with all that mumbo jumbo out of the way, I kind of want to make a candid video, just kind of going over some stuff here, and then near the end, I'm going to pug a heroic boss in Awakened Aberrus just to kind of give you my thoughts live as I play. Okay, so as far as talents go for raid, most Resto Druids are using the same talent build you can find off of like the Wowhead raid guide. Honestly, in all of my experience playing Resto Druid, typically what the majority is using is correct. You don't need to make like any crazy changes for the most part. That being said, to be an instant hypocrite, I do have a couple changes in my talent build from the one you can find on Wowhead, and I'll go over that in a second. But yeah, I want to go ahead and pull up this so you guys can see the raid talents I'm using. I will go over these in a second, but quickly I want to go over the 3 or 4 main abilities that I think are super important for healing specifically in your heals as Resto Druid and raid. So the first one, and the most simple one I want to go over, is Nature Swiftness. So this little guy here. Nature Swiftness is super cool because it is basically a panic massive regrowth. You hit that button, and for the next couple seconds, your next rejuve or regrowth are going to be instant and heal 100% more. I would not use it on rejuves because really it doesn't seem worth it to use that on a hot that you would ramp with. It's much better if you see someone get hit by a mechanic, or if you get hit by something and you're low, to just pop that and insta-free regrowth yourself for basically 100% better heals. So that is exclusively what I use that for. The next thing I want to go over is Innervate. Innervate is super cool because it gives you 8 seconds of mana-free casting, which is going to be really important for ramps. Because typically, if you do a full raid ramp, you're using somewhere between probably like 20 to 25% of your mana. If you were to cast, 15 Rejuves, a Swiftmend, a Wild Growth, a Life Bloom, and an Flow and a Flourish, right? That is a lot of mana. And so if you can get 1 to 3 of those free an encounter, you're saving a lot of mana that way. So typically with most Resto Druid healing cooldowns, which is going to be Innervate and the 2 other I'm going to go over in a second, I like to use it very early on in the pull, like probably the very first damage window that you can think of, so that you can use it potentially 2 more times throughout the kill, which unless you're in a really strong guild that's killing bosses in like 5 minutes, in my experience, most of the mythic bosses at least are lasting somewhere between 6 to 8 minutes. So again, you want to get 2 to 3 uses out of some of these abilities. One good example of this is Sark, whether it be heroic or mythic. Literally the second you pull is just destroying the entire raid group. So you'll see later in a heroic pull I do, where I'm kind of going over how I do my healing, that I use my Innervate pretty early on for a ramp. I didn't get the full pull timer I wanted, but usually I'll do a 20-second pull timer with my guild for Sark, and I'll ramp from about the 15-second mark. Once it hits 8 seconds, I'll Innervate and do the last 8 seconds of my ramp free. That way, the whole raid has hots on them when all that damage is coming out, and I can get a pretty good flourish out of it. And then the Innervate will be up again later when I need it. So you want to try and use that pretty early on, and you want to use that 100% of the time. So the second that's off cooldown, the next closest window where you would benefit from it, you want to use it. Every time you use it, you want to try and get about 4 to 5 Rejuves, maybe a Swiftmend maybe a Swiftmend out, definitely a Wild Growth out every single time. If your Flow is low, you want to reset the Efflorescence as well. So yeah, Innervate, Hyper Poggers, you always want to use that. The next big cooldown is going to be Incarnation Tree of Life, which is this guy here. You should know what it is. This synergizes really well with our Season 3 and 4 tier set bonuses that we're stuck with now, which makes our Grove Guardians heal for a lot more. Just being in tree form with the talents we take just spawns them. There goes one right there. So you want to use this really often as well. Now, you want to try and not use this as a reactive cooldown. If you know a ton of damage is coming up in, 15 seconds, you want to do pop your Tree of Life, ramp with your empowered heals for 15 seconds. Right when the damage comes out, do a Swiftmend Wild Growth, and then you'll have, somewhere between 10 to 15 seconds of tree left to reactive heal, which means instant cast regrowths that are going to be super cheap because you have so many rejuves out already. All the heals are going to be empowered. And with our talent build, when these guys spawn off our Tree of Life, they're throwing their own little wild growths out. So you get a ton of heals out of using Tree of Life, and you want to use that, again, pretty early on in the fight, so that you can use it maybe 1 or 2 more times throughout the fight. Additionally, we take this talent here, Reforestation, which makes it so every 3 Swiftmends we use, we get a couple seconds of tree. Anytime that procs, you also want to use a Swiftmend Wild Growth combo during it so that you can get the benefit of the 2 extra Wild Growth targets from being in Tree of Life. Very good cooldown. Now, our third cooldown that I'm going to talk about, and basically the only spell you want to use reactively outside of the Nature Swiftness, is Trank. So, Trank, if you for some reason are unfamiliar, is this, huge, fun channel button. It looks awesome, and it is a shadow of its former self, meaning it is not the button you can just press and insta do 4 billion healing anymore, right? So, with Trank, that is actually the only heal we have where you don't want to use that until the damage hits. So what I mean by that is, like I just explained with Tree, you're going to be ramping 15 seconds before the damage hits, so that right when everyone takes damage, you've already done the heavy lifting. All your heals are out healing people. Trank is the flip side, so you want to use that right after the damage hits. More akin to like how a shaman would start chain healing after the damage hits, right? That's when you want to use Trank. So for example, in a Mythic Magmarax the other night, we were grouping up with all the soaks. It hits, the entire raid's at like 20% health. I Trank the second that damage hits. You want to try and not waste any ticks of Trank before the damage hits, because you're wasting potentially like 1 to 3 million healing if you do that. Trank also leaves a hot that is really negligible. It helps with our mastery stacks, but that is it. It does not really do anything. The bulk use of Trank is just to get the on-use heals out of Trank. So again, just to reiterate for a final time, because it's still something I'm working on myself, you really have to teach yourself not to Trank early. So like if damage is coming up in 2 seconds, don't just use it now. Cast 1 more Rejuve or 1 more Wild Growth then use Trank. And to make Trank stronger, you always want to ramp into Trank. So you can throw a couple Rejuves out, Swiftman into Wild Growth, you know, you have about 10 to 11 people with HOTS on them, then Trank, and you're going to see a lot better numbers out of that. A couple other bonus tips with Trank. Try not to use Trank if you think you're going to have to move. Sometimes you have to risk it and maybe you'll get lucky, but if you have to cancel Trank early, it hurts for multiple reasons. One, if your raid is relying on Trank as a healing cooldown to get through damage and you move early, you potentially won't have everyone topped off when they need to be, and maybe another mechanic comes in and kills a couple people. Additionally, most of the time we're taking this talent, which makes it so that if you full cast Trank, all your other healing cooldowns are reduced by 20 seconds. So if you cancel that early, you're going to mess with the timing of your cooldowns for the rest of the fight. This is really helpful because if you ramp right before Trank, you can Wild Growth literally the second before you Trank. When you're done using Trank, you can Wild Growth again. Additionally, Innervate, Flourish, Tree of Life are all going to be up 20 seconds earlier, which is massive. So every time you use Trank, you want to aim for the full cast out of it. Trank, even though it's not as good as it used to be, is pretty ownage. So those are the main healing abilities I want to go through. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to go through every single ability. This is not a beginner guide. Honestly, I don't even know what every single one of these things does, but they play into each other. So you don't really need to know what every single thing is, which is why I'm making this guide, because I hate when I'm looking into information and I feel like I have to sit through, you know, a 2-hour explanation of every ability I have. Okay, now when it comes to the talent changes I have from the typical guide, I learned this one from Matt, I think his name is Matu in the Resto Druid Discord, and that is Master Shapeshifter, which makes it so that, at least the use that I'm using it for, is when I'm in Boomy form and I'm shooting Wraths, I'm getting mana back. That's really the only downside about this talent as well, is that you can't Wrath out of your standard form. You have to be in Moonkin form to get the mana back. Now the trade-off of this is we're not using Liveliness anymore. Liveliness owns, but if you're like me and you're running out of mana pretty frequently and you want to use the better like your better trinkets, not last season's, you got to use this. And even with Master Shapeshifter, I still sometimes use that mana trinket for when we're progging on a really hard boss, or if I know there's a ton of damage and I just need to use as much mana as I can afford, I'll still use it. But this talent, I'm really starting to master it. I would recommend trying it if you're pretty comfortable in Resto Druid, and you'll see you get a lot of mana back from this. Now the main mistake with this talent is if you swap Boomy form and you just sit there for 20 seconds attacking, you're basically going to let all your heals run out, and then you're going to have to re-ramp from scratch, and you really mess up with your throughput on the damage window. So the best thing you can do there is do a full ramp. The second after the ramp is done and you know everyone's healthy, you want to go in Boomy form and throw, 5 to 6 Wraths out and then start ramping again. Or even better, throw 3 heals out, go Boomy form, throw 2 Wraths, go back to healing. You'll get used to it and kind of find a flow depending on the fight. Some fights are a lot easier. Mythic Sark and Mythic Kurog both had phases where there was basically no healing, so I just went Boomy form and shot like 40 Wraths out and got half a mana bar back. It's cool when that happens, but that does not happen on every boss, so just be mindful of that if you decide to try it. The other talent thing I'm taking that I don't think some people take is Improved Stampeding Roar. The amount of times that people just die to the movement of a boss is kind of nuts, so I just use this basically off cooldown when there's movement in a fight, unless I'm assigned to use it for specific mechanics. If I ever notice, hey, me as a druid, I have to run across this entire platform for this mechanic, I use it. So some good examples of that are when you're on a boss, they throw out 5 little circles all over the platform that everyone has to soak. You want to roar so people can make sure they get there. Or if you're running from side 1 of the map to side 2, like on Farak, for example, Heroic Farak, and he's using Dream Rend, like I remember this was the strat in Heroic, you just pull him in the middle and run to one side or the other, I roar to make sure everyone gets out of the way. If you use roar effectively and like every time there's movement on the minute, people are going to love you, because it really does help certain classes like Warlocks and Priests and stuff like that if there's no gate up. But yeah, that's basically it for the talent build, so if there's any other stuff you have there, feel free to leave a question in the comments and I'll take a look at it. But that's the main stuff I wanted to go over. In a second here, you're going to see a pull I did in a Heroic Sarkareth group. We didn't kill it, but I just wanted to kind of go in there and kind of, record some footage of me healing so I can do a voiceover and let you guys know what I was thinking in each moment. Pause the video if I need to so that I can explain stuff to you guys and really give you an idea of what I'm thinking when I'm playing Resto Druid in an encounter. And I wasn't just going in there to pump HPS. You'll see I'm going Boomy form to get mana back and really thinking about the stuff that's going on. So I will explain all that in a second. But yeah, so before I jump into that footage and show you, I just wanted to quickly go over what my healing ramp rotation looks like for a Resto Druid. This is something that I've gotten questions when I'm in pugs from other Resto Druids. They're like, oh, how are you healing so much? It basically is always coming down to the ramp. It's not ever really a talent thing unless you're using like Mythic Plus talents. It is just in how you ramp. And for me, when I play Resto Druid, I'm not scared to use mana because I'll sit my butt down and drink this whole 10-second potion and I don't care. Like, our heals do a lot. You just have to be willing to use the mana for it without wasting it, right? So earlier when I was explaining the talents, I told you guys one real full ramp will use, 20 to 25% of your mana. I'm just going to do that right here on myself as an example. So I'm going to cast 15 rejuves, a Swift Mend, a Wild Growth, a Life Bloom, and an Efflow into Flourish. And I'm just going to sit here and be quiet and cast it, and you guys can just like take a look at my mana bar and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this is typically what a ramp would look like. I'm just going to kind of go over this so you guys can see what I'm casting, and then we will go into that heroic Sark pool so you guys can see it. So here we go. So what you just saw there is typically what a ramp looks like from me, right? So yeah, 20% of my mana. I used 2 Life Blooms during that, 1 Efflow, 1 Wild Growth, 15 Rejuves, and then I use the Grove Guardian after. I tend to use the Grove Guardian like as the final step of my ramp because when they come out, they cast Wild Growth like immediately. So you don't want to use that 10 seconds before the damage comes out, or else this is a completely wasted heal. So even if I have 2 charges, like I do that full ramp, let's say the damage hits right now, boom, boom, double Wild Growth from these Grove Guardians, and they go crazy. And yeah, I hate Grove Guardians, but they own. Like, for example, this is going to be a little spoiler from the pull I'm about to show you guys, but if I pull up my breakdown, like, Nourish is my top heal, man. That's my damn Grove Guardians. So yeah, they're really important that if you use them properly. But yeah, so let's go ahead and hop into that heroic Sark pool, and I'll kind of show you guys how this plays out in real time. Okay, so we're going to get into the pool. I'm not going to talk the entire time. I'm just going to talk when stuff's important. Right off the bat, I asked for a 15 to 20 second pull timer. They gave me 10. So as you can see, I'm throwing some pre-rejuves on. I innervated and treed because this is a lot of damage. It's a pug, so ignore mechanics a little. But I had a Wild Growth, threw a couple more rejuves, Swift Mend, and now with all this damage coming out, since I didn't get to ramp all the way, I'm just using tree to have insta-cast regrowths on everybody. So using that, obviously going to get in position for the mechanics here. Since I have tree up, I'm just throwing more hots on people. Getting a lot of rejuves out because I know there's more damage to come. As you can see, I get the F-flow notification, so I throw that back down. I run over here real quick to hit the mechanic and clear a stack. And then I do another Swift Mend into Wild Growth because people took damage from that. Going to refresh the Life Bloom. So as you can see, I'm keeping some of the hots alive here. I'm not just constantly spam casting, but I'm getting it ready. This was a little scuffed, but I just said screw it and popped some Renewal and other stuff to keep myself alive. Went back to casting heals on people, keeping my F-flow and Life Bloom up. I got my tree proc here, and I decided to just pop Trank because it was a lot of damage that I wasn't expecting. Got pretty good usage out of it. Gonna utilize the cooldown reduction to do another Swift Mend into Wild Growth. Again, I'm kind of in a weird spot here. It's always a little weird in pugs when whenever is happening. Get over here, start casting some regrowths, make sure everybody's healthy. And I'm just kind of constantly playing into that ebb and flow of keeping hots out if there's rot damage, just kind of throwing them out without a ton of purpose, just to keep people healthy. But then when there's a big burst of damage, I can Swift Mend into Wild Growth, and when I know damage is coming based off the abilities on the side there, I start prepping. So as you can see in a moment here, a ton of damage is going to come out from Surge. So I just insta-pop Tree of Life into Wild Growth. I should have way more hots out. I kind of slipped up here, but I'm just going to do similar to what I did on pull, have a ton of hots out and start regrowth casting. And we're going to go ahead and phase here. Not a lot of damage coming out here, but making sure people have hots in case some weird stuff happens. I'm going to pick up my haste buffs before I come back out into the real world. Gonna come out. Started with the Wild Growth since there wasn't a lot of damage. And I know, based off experience, there's not a ton of damage in Phase 2 unless we mess stuff up, so I throw some casual hots out, and then I'm going to go ahead and go Boomy Form. And this is that talent I was talking about earlier. I know there's not a lot of damage, so I'm just hitting the boss. Gonna get some mana back. That being said, I do try to keep some hots out just so that if damage comes out, I'm not starting from scratch. I noticed there that we had some damage come out, so I threw a Wild Growth and some Rejuves out. Gonna go back Boomy for him, put some hots in, get some mana back again. I noticed I had Innervate and there was some damage coming out, so I just popped it. Get the cooldown going. Gonna throw more hots out, like I said, refresh my buffs. I'm using Regrowth there because I have my clear casting procs that I want to use, my free cast. Again, I see more damage, so I do another Swiftman and a Wild Growth combo. This is like kind of just keeping the raid healthy. I'm not ramping for these, I'm kind of just more reactively healing. Go back into Boomy so I can get some more mana. Okay, now I know Infinite Duress is coming out, so I'm going to put some hots on people here in case we go flying into stuff, and I pop the Dispel on him. As you can see, there's some damage now. I wasn't really expecting that, so thought there was a little less damage. Now this is where Steph goes to shit. As you can see, someone scuffed the bomb, so we wiped here, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea as to what you can expect when it comes to Resto Druid Healing and Raid. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or if you just want to call me trash, go ahead and leave that in the comments. Otherwise, catch y'all next time. Peace.